The rain-soaked streets of New York City gleamed under the neon lights, but I was running, heart pounding, shoes slapping wet pavement, my life unraveling with every step. I just spent the most electrifying night of my life with a man who made my soul catch fire, and now I was fleeing like a coward. By dawn, I'd be on a plane, leaving him in this city behind forever, or so I thought. My name is Ethan Carter, a 24-year-old nobody from small Ohio town, chasing dreams in the city that never sleeps. I came to New York to be a writer, to escape the suffocating expectations of my conservative family who'd never understand the truth I'd buried deep. I'm gay, and I've spent years pretending I'm not. This city was supposed to be my fresh start, but instead, it handed me Lucas Kane, a man who shattered every wall I'd built in a single night. It started at a dive bar in Brooklyn, the kind of place where the air smells of stale beer and ambition. I was nursing a whiskey, scribbling bad poetry in my notebook when he walked in. Lucas was a storm in human form, tall, broad-shouldered, with piercing green eyes and a jawline that could cut glass. He moved with the confidence of someone who owned every room he entered, and when his gaze locked onto mine, I forgot how to breathe. "You look like you're writing the next great American novel," he said, sliding onto the stool beside me. His voice was low, warm, like honey over gravel. I laughed, nervous, and mumbled something about it being just scribbles. He leaned closer, his arm brushing mine, and I swear the world tilted. We talked for hours about art, music, the way New York makes you feel alive and invisible all at once. He was a photographer, 28, with a portfolio of gritty street shots that captured the city's soul. Every word he spoke felt like a spark, igniting parts of me I kept locked away. When he asked if I wanted to see his studio, I said yes before my brain could catch up. His studio was a loft in Dumbo, all exposed brick and floor-to-ceiling windows. Polaroids hung on strings, fluttering like ghosts in the moonlight. He showed me his work, his fingers brushing mine as he handed me a photo of a couple kissing under a street lamp. "This is what I chase," he said. "Moments that feel like forever." I don't know who moved first, but suddenly his lips were on mine, urgent and hungry. It wasn't just a kiss. It was a confession, a release of everything I'd suppressed. We stumbled to his couch, clothes falling away, and for the first time, I wasn't afraid of who I was. His touch was electric, his whispers a promise that this was real. But as dawn crept through the windows, panic clawed at me. This wasn't my life. I wasn't ready to be this version of myself. Not yet. So I ran. While Lucas slept, I slipped out, leaving no note, no number, just the ghost of my touch on his skin. I told myself it was a one-night thing, a beautiful mistake I'd carry like a secret. By noon, I'd booked a flight back to Ohio, convinced I could outrun the truth. But as I packed my tiny apartment, his face haunted me. Those green eyes, that smile that made me believe I could be enough. The cab ride to JFK was a blur of regret. I stared out the window, the city skyline, fading like a dream I wasn't ready to wake from. I thought I'd left him behind, but fate had other plans. At the airport, as I dragged my suitcase toward security, a voice cut through the chaos. "Ethan!" I froze. It was him, Lucas, standing by the check-in counters, his hair disheveled, his eyes wild with determination. He followed me. My heart surged, but fear gripped me tighter. What did he want? What could I possibly say to the man who'd seen me, truly seen me, for one perfect night? "Ethan, wait!" he called, weaving through the crowd. I wanted to run again, but my feet wouldn't move. He stopped in front of me, breathless, his gaze locking onto mine. "You can't just disappear like that. Not after last night." I opened my mouth, but no words came. The airport buzzed around us, announcements blaring, travelers rushing, but all I could see was him. "Lucas, I can't do this," I stammered. "I'm not who you think I am." "Bullshit," he said, stepping closer. "I saw you last night. The real you. And I'm not letting you run from that." His words hit like a punch. I wanted to believe him, to fall into the promise of his voice, but years of hiding had built walls he couldn't break in a day. "You don't understand," I said, my voice cracking. "I'm not out. My family, my town, they'll never accept this. I'm not brave like you." Lucas's face softened, but his eyes burned with intensity. "You think I'm not scared? I've lost friends, jobs, people I loved because of who I am. But last night with you, I felt something real. And I know you felt it too." I did. God, I did. But the weight of my past, of my parents' expectations, of a town that would shun me, pressed down like a vice. "I'm sorry," I whispered, turning away. "I have to go." His hand caught mine, firm but gentle. "Ethan, you don't have to do this alone. Let me in." For a moment, I stood there, torn between the life I'd always known and the one I'd tasted with him. The boarding call for my flight echoed through the terminal, a ticking clock on my decision. I looked into his eyes, searching for a reason to stay, and found 1,000. But fear is a powerful thing, and mine was winning. I pulled my hand from Lucas's grip, my heart splintering as I did. The airport's fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting harsh shadows on his face, but his eyes never left mine. I turned and walked toward security, each step heavier than the last, as if the universe itself was begging me to stay. The line moved slowly, giving me too much time to think. I replayed the night before, Lucas's laugh, the way his fingers traced my spine, the way he'd whispered my name like it was something sacred. I'd spent years hiding, pretending to be the perfect son, the straight guy who'd settle down with a wife and kids someday. But with Lucas, I'd been free, if only for a few hours. Now I was choosing safety over truth, and it felt like betraying myself. I glanced back, half hoping he'd be gone, half praying he wouldn't. He was still there, standing by a coffee kiosk, watching me with a mix of hope and heartbreak. My chest ached. I wanted to run back to him, to say yes to whatever he was offering, but the thought of my parents' disappointment, of my hometown's judgment, kept me rooted. Security was a blur. Shoes off, bag scanned, my mind elsewhere. I kept expecting to hear his voice again, but he didn't follow. Maybe he'd given up. Maybe I'd push him away for good. The thought made my stomach twist, but I told myself it was for the best. I wasn't ready to be the man he saw in me. At the gate, I sank into a plastic chair, staring at my boarding pass. Columbus, Ohio. Home. But it didn't feel like home anymore. Not after New York, not after him. I pulled out my notebook, the one I'd been scribbling in when we met, and flipped to the page from last night. My handwriting was messy, fueled by whiskey and longing. He's a spark in the dark, and I'm afraid to burn. A voice over the intercom announced boarding. I stood, my legs shaky, and joined the line. That's when I heard it again, his voice, closer this time. "Ethan, please." I turned, and there he was just beyond the gates barrier, his camera bag slung over his shoulder. He bought a ticket just to get this far. The desperation in his eyes mirrored my own, and for a moment, I couldn't move. "Lucas, why are you doing this?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "Because I've spent my life chasing moments," he said, stepping as close as the barrier allowed. "And you're not just a moment. You're the whole damn story." His words cracked something open inside me. I wanted to believe him, to believe in us, but fear was a louder voice. "I can't," I said, tears stinging my eyes. "I'm not strong enough." "You are," he insisted. "You just don't know it yet." The line moved forward, pulling me toward the jet bridge. I looked back one last time, memorizing his face, the tousled dark hair, the way his jaw tightened with emotion. "I'm sorry," I said, and stepped onto the plane. The flight was torture. Every hum of the engine felt like a countdown to a life I didn't want. I stared out the window, the clouds blurring into memories of his touch. When we landed in Columbus, I felt hollow, like I'd left a piece of myself in New York. I grabbed my bag and headed to the exit, ready to face the life I'd run back to. But there, in the arrivals hall, stood Lucas. I stopped dead, my suitcase slipping from my hand. "Ow!" I started, but he cut me off. "I took the next flight," he said, his voice steady but raw. "I told you, Ethan, I'm not letting you go that easily." My heart raced. Part of me wanted to scream at him for making this harder, but another part, the louder part, wanted to collapse into his arms. Lucas, this isn't a movie. You can't just follow me across the country and expect everything to work out. Maybe not, he said, stepping closer. But I can try. Because last night wasn't just a fling. It was the start of something, and you know it. I didn't know it. But knowing and acting were two different things. My parents were waiting outside, expecting their normal son to walk through those doors. If I chose Lucas, I'd be choosing a fight I wasn't sure I could win. My family, I started, but my voice broke. I'm not asking you to come out to them today, he said softly. I'm just asking you to give us a chance. Stay with me, just for a little while. Let's figure this out together. I looked into his eyes, searching for a reason to say no, but all I found was hope. For the first time, I let myself imagine a life where I didn't have to hide. A life with him. Okay, I whispered, barely believing the word as it left my lips. I'll stay. His smile was like sunlight breaking through clouds. He reached for my hand, and I let him take it, the warmth of his touch grounding me. We walked out of the airport together, my parents' car waiting just beyond the glass doors. I didn't know what I'd say to them or how I'd face the storm ahead, but for the first time, I wasn't running. The Ohio air was thick with the scent of cut grass and regret as Lucas and I stepped out of the airport. My parents' blue sedan idled in the pickup lane, and I froze, my hand still in his. This was it, the moment where my two worlds collided. Lucas squeezed my hand, a silent reminder that I wasn't alone, but my stomach churned with dread. Ethan, my mom's voice cut through the noise of the airport. She stepped out of the car, her face a mix of confusion and concern as she spotted Lucas. Who's this? I opened my mouth, but no words came. Lucas stepped forward, his voice calm but firm. I'm Lucas Kane, a friend of Ethan's from New York. The word friend stung, but I was grateful for the cover. I wasn't ready to tell them the truth. Not here, not now. My dad climbed out of the driver's seat, his eyes narrowing as he sized Lucas up. New York, huh? You didn't mention any friends, Ethan. I met him recently. I stammered, my heart pounding. He's just visiting. The lie felt heavy, but Lucas played along, flashing a charming smile that disarmed my mom, if not my dad. I had to see Ohio for myself, he said lightly. Ethan's told me a lot about it. We piled into the car, Lucas in the back with me, our knees brushing in the cramped space. My parents peppered us with small talk, but I could barely focus. Every glance at Lucas reminded me of the choice I'd made, to stay with him, to face whatever came next. But as we drove through the familiar streets of my hometown, the weight of that choice grew heavier. My parents' house was a modest two-story with a white picket fence, the kind of place that screamed normal. Inside, it was all floral wallpaper and family photos, each one a reminder of the son they thought I was. Lucas took it all in, his photographer's eye-catching details I'd long stopped noticing. The faded quilt on the couch, the way my mom smiled didn't quite reach her eyes. Dinner was tense. My dad grilled Lucas about his job, his life, his intentions, while my mom fussed over the food, avoiding the undercurrent of suspicion. Lucas handled it with ease, weaving stories about his photography that made my parents laugh despite themselves. But I could feel their questions, unspoken but loud. Why is he here? What's going on with our son? After dinner, Lucas and I retreated to the guest room, where he'd been graciously allowed to stay. The room was small, with a single bed and a creaky floorboard, but it felt like a sanctuary. We sat on the bed, our voices low, the weight of the day pressing down on us. You okay? Lucas asked, his hand finding mine. No, I admitted, my voice barely a whisper. I don't know how to do this. They're going to hate me when they find out. They might surprise you, he said, but his tone was cautious. And even if they don't, you're not alone. I'm here. His words were a lifeline, but they couldn't erase the fear. I'd spent my whole life hiding, and now the truth was clawing its way out. What if I'm not ready? I asked, my eyes burning with unshed tears. Then we take it one step at a time, he said, pulling me close. His arms were warm, steady, and for a moment, I let myself believe everything would be okay. The next morning, my mom cornered me in the kitchen while Lucas was out for a run. "Ethan, what's going on?" she asked, her voice tight. "You've been acting strange ever since you got back. And this Lucas, he's not just a friend, is he?" I froze, my coffee mug trembling in my hands. This was the moment I dreaded my entire life. "Mom, I started, but the words caught in my throat. I wanted to tell her, to be honest, but the fear of losing her, of losing everything, held me back." She searched my face, her eyes softening. "You can tell me, honey. Whatever it is, I just want you to be happy." Her words broke something in me. I set the mug down, my hands shaking. "I'm gay," I said, the words spilling out before I could stop them. "And Lucas, he's more than a friend. He's everything." The silence that followed was deafening. My mom's face went pale, her lips parting as if to speak, but no words came. Finally, she reached for my hand, her grip tight. "Ethan, I don't understand. But I love you. I just need time." It wasn't acceptance, not yet, but it was a start. Tears streamed down my face as I hugged her, relief and fear tangling in my chest. When Lucas returned, sweaty and smiling, I told him what happened. His eyes lit up with pride, and he pulled me into a hug that felt like home. But the peace didn't last. That night, my dad overheard us talking in the guest room. Our voices too loud, our affection too obvious. He stormed in, his face red with anger. "Is this true?" he demanded, glaring at me. "Are you one of them?" The word hit like a slap. I stood, my knees weak, but Lucas stepped in front of me, his voice steady. "Mr. Carter, Ethan's still your son. Nothing changes that." "Get out," my dad said, his voice low and dangerous. "Both of you." We left under the cover of night, my suitcase rattling against the gravel as Lucas and I walked to the bus station. My dad's words echoed in my head, each one a knife to the heart. My mom had stood in the doorway, tears in her eyes, but she didn't stop us. I wasn't sure if she wanted to, or if she was too shocked to try. The bus to Columbus was nearly empty, the hum of the engine a dull comfort. Lucas sat beside me, his hand resting on my knee, a silent anchor in the storm of my thoughts. "I'm sorry," I said finally, my voice hoarse. "I dragged you into this mess." "You didn't drag me anywhere," he said, his eyes fierce. "I chose to be here. For you." His words warmed me, but they couldn't erase the pain. I lost my family, or at least it felt that way. The life I'd known was gone, and I had no idea what came next. Lucas seemed to sense my spiral, because he pulled out his phone and showed me a photo he'd taken in New York, a blurry shot of us laughing in a studio, our faces lit by candlelight. "This is who we are," he said. "Not the fear, not the pain. This." I stared at the photo, my heart aching with a mix of love and loss. "What do we do now?" I asked. "We start over," he said simply. "Together." We ended up in a cheap motel on the outskirts of Columbus, the kind of place where the neon sign flickered and the walls smelled of stale smoke. It wasn't romantic, but it was ours. We lay on a lumpy bed, staring at the ceiling, talking about everything and nothing. Lucas told me about his own coming out, how his parents had kicked him out at 17, how he'd build a life anyway. "It gets better," he promised. "Not easier, but better." The next day, we wandered the city, trying to make sense of our new reality. Columbus wasn't New York, but it had its own charm. Quiet parks, cozy coffee shops, a sense of possibility. Lucas took photos of me as we walked, his camera clicking like a heartbeat. "You're my muse," he teased, and I laughed, the sound foreign after so much pain. But the weight of my dad's rejection lingered. I kept checking my phone, hoping for a text from my mom, but it stayed silent. Lucas noticed, of course. He always noticed. "Give them time," he said, squeezing my hand. "They might come around." I wanted to believe him, but doubt gnawed at me. That night, as we sat in a diner, sharing a plate of fries, I told him about my childhood, about the pressure to be perfect, the fear of disappointing my parents. He listened, his eyes never leaving mine, and when I finished, he leaned across the table and kissed me, soft and sure. "You're enough," he said, "just as you are." Those words carried me through the next few days. We found a tiny apartment to rent, pooling our savings to cover the deposit. It was a shoebox, but it was ours, a place to build something new. Lucas got a job at a local gallery, and I started submitting my writing to magazines, my words infused with the courage he'd given me. But the past wasn't done with us. A week later, I got a call from my mom. Her voice was shaky, apologetic. "Your dad's struggling," she said, "but I want to see you. Can we talk?" I agreed, my heart in my throat. Lucas came with me, his presence a quiet strength as we met my mom at a park. She hugged me, tears streaming down her face, and for the first time, I felt a flicker of hope. "I don't understand everything," she said, glancing at Lucas, "but I want to try. For you." It wasn't perfect, but it was a start. We talked for hours, and though she didn't fully embrace Lucas, she didn't push him away either. When we left, I felt lighter, like I could breathe again. Lucas took my hand as we walked back to our apartment, the city lights reflecting in his eyes. "You did good," he said, smiling. "So did you," I replied, pulling him close. That night, as we lay in our new bed, the world felt different. Not perfect, not easy, but possible. I traced the lines of Lucas's face, memorizing every detail, and realized I wasn't running anymore. I was choosing him, choosing us, choosing myself. Months passed, and our life in Columbus took shape. The apartment became a home, filled with Lucas's photos and my scattered notebooks. We fought sometimes about money, about my late-night writing binges, about his tendency to leave dishes in the sink, but every argument ended with us tangled in each other's arms, stronger for it. Love, I learned, wasn't just the spark of that first night. It was the work of every day after. My writing started to gain traction. A small magazine published one of my stories, a semi-autobiographical piece about a boy running from himself. The day it went live, Lucas framed the first page and hung it on our wall. "You're a storyteller," he said, kissing my forehead, "and you're telling the truth now." My mom visited every few weeks, her acceptance growing with each trip. My dad was still distant, but he'd started texting short, awkward messages that felt like olive branches. I held on to hope, knowing change takes time. Lucas's family, on the other hand, became my own. His sister, a loud, warm-hearted woman named Claire, welcomed me like a brother, and their holiday dinners were chaotic, joyful affairs that filled the holes my own family had left. One evening, as winter blanketed Columbus in snow, Lucas took me to a park near our apartment. The same park from my story, the one I'd written about in that dive bar in Brooklyn. He carried a blanket and a thermos of hot chocolate, his camera slung over his shoulder. "I want to show you something," he said, leading me to a bench under a bare oak tree. He pulled out his camera and showed me a series of photos, us, over the past months. Me laughing in our kitchen, me typing furiously at my desk, us kissing in the rain. The last photo was from that first night in New York, the blurry one of us in his studio. "This is our story," he said, his voice thick with emotion. And I wanted to keep going. He dropped to one knee, pulling a simple silver ring from his pocket. My heart stopped. "Ethan Carter," he said, his eyes shining. "I don't care where we are, New York, Ohio, or the middle of nowhere. I just want to be with you. Will you marry me?" Tears blurred my vision as I nodded, unable to speak. He slipped the ring onto my finger, and I pulled him up, kissing him as snow fell around us. The world was quiet, perfect ours. We planned a small wedding, just close friends and family. My mom helped with the flowers, her smile brighter than I'd ever seen. My dad showed up, stiff but present, and when he hugged me after the ceremony, I felt a weight lift. "I'm trying," he whispered, and I knew he meant it. The reception was in a community center, strung with fairy lights and filled with laughter. Lucas and I danced to a slow song, his arms around me, his breath warm against my ear. "You're my home," he said, and I knew it was true. Years later, I'd look back on that night in New York as the spark that changed everything. It wasn't just about one night with a hot alpha. It was about finding the courage to be myself, to love without fear, to build a life worth living. Lucas followed me to the airport, but in the end, we followed each other step by step into a future neither of us could have imagined. As we stood under the stars on our wedding night, I realized something. I wasn't running anymore. I was exactly where I was meant to be,